This video was made possible thanks to the support of our exquisite patrons. Your generosity is truly appreciated. Hello and welcome to another EDH gameplay video brought to you by Affinity for Commander. My name is Martin.
And my name is Alex.
Today we have a nice mixture of commanders, ranging from colourless to all the colours. It was a really interesting game to play and we hope that you enjoy it as much as we did. Also, special thanks to Will for drawing us the artwork which is currently on the screen. We absolutely love it. And with that, let's move on to our opening hands.
Phil's commander is Niv-Mizzet Reborn. His opening hand is made up of Limdol's Vault, Dreadball, Solar Blaze, Watery Grave, Godless Shrine, Stomping Ground, and a Mountain.
My commander is Kozilek the Great Distortion. My opening hand consists of Relic of Progenitus, Swiftfoot Boots, Hedron Archive, Command Beacon, Temple of the False God, and 2 Wastes.
Stephen is playing as Rafiq of the Many deck, and keeps an opening hand containing Phyrexian Swarmlord, Wayfarer's Bauble, Beast Within, Command Tower, Blossoming Sands, Woodland Stream, and a Forest.
And finally, Liam's commander is Surrak Dragonclaw. His opening hand contains Kiora's Follower, Kiora Master of the Depths, Temur Ascendancy, Explosive Vegetation, Mosswort Bridge, a Mountain, and a Forest.
Liam wins the die roll and starts the game off by playing a Forest. He then passes to Stephen.
Stephen plays Command Tower and then casts Wayfarer's Bauble. He then passes the turn.
Phil plays Watery Grave, having it entered tapped, and ends his turn.
I play a Waste and cast Relic of Progenitus. I then pass to Liam.
Liam plays a Mountain and passes the turn.
Stephen plays a Forest and sacrifices his Bauble to search his library for a Plains and puts it into play tapped. He then ends his turn.
Phil plays Godless Shrine, paying 2 life to have it end untapped. He then passes to Martin, who responds by activating his relic, targeting Stephen. Stephen exiles his Bauble and then Martin proceeds to his turn.
I play a Waste and cast Mirror of the Forebears, naming Eldrazi. I then pass the turn.
Liam plays Mosswort Bridge and exiles one of the top 4 cards of his library underneath the land. He then ends his turn.
Stephen plays Blossoming Sands, gaining a life, and casts Thasser, God of the Sea. He then passes to Phil, who responds by casting Limdol's Vault. He rearranges the top 5 cards of his library and then moves to his turn.
Phil plays a Mountain and then casts Field Mist Border Post for its actual mana cost. He then passes the turn and Martin responds by making him exile Limdol's Vault with his relic before proceeding to his turn.
I play Command Beacon and then cast Swiftfoot Boots before ending my turn.
Liam plays Karplusan Forest and then casts Explosive Vegetation. He searches his library for 2 islands, puts them into play tapped, and passes to Stephen.
Stephen casts his commander, Rafiq of the Many, and then plays Woodland Stream. He then passes the turn.
Phil plays a Forest and then casts his commander, Niv-Mizzet Reborn. He reveals the top 10 cards of his library, putting Windgrace's Judgment, Counterflux, Void Slime, and Firewild Border Post into his hand, discards down to 7, and ends his turn. Martin responds by forcing Liam to exile his Explosive Vegetation with his relic, and then proceeds to his turn.
I play Temple of the False God, which sadly taps for nothing at this stage in the game, and cast Brittle Effigy. Next I sacrifice my Relic of Progenitus to exile everyone's graveyards and draw a card. I then pass to Liam.
Liam plays a Forest and casts Temur Ascendancy. He then casts Kiora's Follower and passes the turn.
Stephen keeps the top card of his library where it is, draws it and casts Always Watching. Next he casts Qualsai Pridemage and moves to combat. Stephen rolls a die to decide who his commander should attack, and fate chooses Phil as the recipient of Rafiq's sword. Not wanting to take 12 commander damage on turn 5, Phil blocks the Knight of his dragon and Stephen ends his turn.
Phil casts Notion Rain, putting the top card of his library into his graveyard, drawing 2 and taking 2 damage. He then casts Dreadball, destroying Rafiq, and passes to Martin.
I play Forge of Heroes and then cast Hedron Archive. With nothing more to do, I pass the turn.
Liam plays a Forest and casts Wayward Sawtooth. He draws a card from Temur Ascendancy, gains the City's Blessing, and plays a second Forest. Not yet finished, Liam casts Kiora, Master of the Depths, and uses her follower to untap one of his lands. Next, Liam activates Kiora's +1 ability, untapping the follower and another land before ending his turn.
Stephen keeps the top card of his library where it is, draws it, and passes to Phil. How suspicious.
Phil plays Sacred Foundry, paying 2 life to have it enter untapped, and casts Firemind's Research. He then passes the turn.
I play Sanctum of Ugin and then cast Paradox Engine, which was still unbanned back in May when this video was recorded. I then end my turn and Liam responds by flashing in his commander, Surrak Dragonclaw. Stephen responds to this by sacrificing his Pride Mage to destroy Temur Ascendancy, preventing Liam from drawing a card, and Liam proceeds to his turn.
Liam uses Kyora's -2 ability, revealing the top 4 cards of his library to be Vivian's Arcbow, Mystic Snake, Genesis Hydra, and Vivian, Champion of the Wilds. He puts the Hydra into his hand and the other cards into his graveyard before casting the aforementioned creature, where X is 8. Liam puts 8 +1/+1 counters on the Hydra and reveals the top 8 cards of his library. He puts Urabrask the Hidden into play and then moves to combat, attacking Stephen with his 8/8 Genesis Hydra. Stephen responds to this by casting Beast Within, destroying the multi-headed monster and replacing it with a 3/3 Beast token. Deeply saddened by this, Liam passes the turn to Stephen.
Stephen keeps the top card of his library where it is, draws it and plays Windbrisk Heights. He exiles one of the top 4 cards of his library underneath the land and passes the turn, to which Phil responds by casting Windgrace's Judgment. He puts a charge counter on Firemind's Research, destroys Paradox Engine, Kiora and Always Watching, and then moves to his turn.
Phil casts Solar Blaze, destroying all of Liam's creatures and making him rather sad once again. He then puts another charge counter on his enchantment and ends his turn.
I play Buried Ruin and then cast my commander, Kozilek the Great Distortion. I draw 5 cards from his cast trigger and then pass to Liam.
Liam casts Netherhall, Primal Tide, and then passes the turn.
Stephen scries the top card of his library to the bottom, draws a card and recasts his commander. He then ends his turn, and Phil responds to this by removing 2 counters from Firemind's Research, drawing a card, and then proceeds to his turn.
Phil plays Exotic Orchard and then recasts Niv-Mizzet Reborn. He reveals the top 10 cards of his library, putting Plasm Capture, Teferi's Oath, Hidden Stockpile, Vane Fire Border Post, and Sterling Grove into his hand. Phil then casts the Border Post, returning a mountain to his hand, discards down to 7, and passes to Martin.
I play Darksteel Citadel and then move to combat. I take a leaf out of Stephen's book, rolling to decide who will feel the might of an Eldrazi Titan, and swing my commander at Phil. Unable to block due to Kozilek's menace, Phil takes 12 damage and I move to my post-combat main phase. It's at this point that Liam tries to reassure the table that my commander is easy to deal with, given that it doesn't have Indestructible. I respond to this statement by casting Ulamog the Infinite Gaia, which definitely is indestructible, and roll a die to decide his cast trigger's target. Rafiq is chosen to be destroyed, and I then pass the turn.
Liam casts Rampaging Baloths, which Martin swiftly counters by discarding Oblivion Sower to Kozilek's ability. Who's saving his blue to ruin people's fun? Liam then plays a mountain and ends his turn.
Stephen keeps the top card of his library where it is, draws it and casts Chromatic Lantern. Liam draws a card thanks to Netherhall's ability, and Stephen passes to Phil.
Phil plays a mountain, tells Martin it would be in his best interest not to attack him, and passes the turn.
I play a waste and then move to combat. I attack Liam with Kozilek and Stephen with Ulamog, causing Stephen to sacrifice 4 permanents of Ulamog's Annihilator trigger. Stephen responds to this by casting Bant Charm, choosing to put the Titan on the bottom of my library. Liam draws a card and I counter the charm by discarding Oblivion Stone. Wanting Ulamog gone just as much as Stephen, Phil counters Kozilek's ability by casting Void Slime, putting a charge counter on his Firemind's Research. Liam draws yet another card of his dinosaur, Ulamog is put on the bottom of my library, and Stephen sacrifices 4 lands. Ouch! Liam then takes 12 damage from Kozilek and I move to my second main phase. I equip my boots to Kozilek, realising that I really should have done this a lot sooner, and cast Duplicant, targeting Niv-Mizzet. Phil puts his commander into the command zone, preventing my robot from copying it, and I then end my turn.
Liam draws a turn, contemplates many different lines of play, and then passes to Stephen without casting anything.
Stephen scries the top card of his library to the bottom, draws a card and casts Sword of the Animist. He then passes the turn.
Phil casts Supreme Verdict, which unfortunately for Martin can't be countered. He puts a counter on his enchantment, Liam draws a card, and then discards 3 cards to exile Netherhall until the end of turn. Martin's creatures are then destroyed and Phil ends his turn. Liam returns his dinosaur to the battlefield tapped, and Martin proceeds to his turn.
I play Zalfarin Void and keep the top card of my library where it is. Next I recast my commander, and Liam counters the Titan by flashing in Frilled Mystic. I draw 3 cards thanks to Kozilek's cast trigger, and then pass to Liam.
Liam casts Goreclaw, Terror of Qual Sisma, and then moves to combat. He joins in on the trend of rolling a die to decide who to attack, and the deity of dice chooses Phil as the target of Nezahul's attack. Phil takes 7 damage, and Liam passes the turn.
Stephen keeps the top card of his library where it is, draws it, and plays Azorius Guildgate. He then ends his turn, and Phil responds by removing 2 counters from his enchantment to draw a card before moving to his turn.
Phil casts Miari's Wake, and Liam draws a card thanks to Nezahul. Liam then counters Phil's spell with Counterflux, and Phil passes to Martin. Martin responds to this by sacrificing his command beacon to put his commander into his hand, and then proceeds to his turn.
I play Eldrazi Temple, and once again cast Kozilek the Great Distortion. Phil counters my commander with Plasm Capture, putting a counter on his enchantment, and Liam draws a card. Next I cast Eldrazi Mimic, equip my boots to the little critter, and turn my Mirror of the Forebears into a copy of the Mimic. Moving to combat, I attack Phil with both of my creatures, dealing him 4 damage, and then pass the turn.
Liam plays a forest and casts Protean Hulk. Moving to combat, he attacks Martin with his Mystic and Stephen with his Dinosaur. Martin takes 3, Stephen takes 7, and Liam ends his turn.
Stephen keeps the top card of his library where it is, draws it, and casts a very shiny Rampant Growth. Liam draws a card, and Stephen searches his library for an island, putting it into play tapped. He then passes to Phil.
Phil adds 10 blue mana to his mana pool thanks to Plasm Capture, and then casts Sterling Grove. Next he casts Omniessence, terrifying the rest of the table, followed by Demand. Phil puts a charge counter on Firemine's Research, searches his library for Obzedat's Aid, and casts a spell, putting another counter on Firemine's Research. Liam draws, and Phil returns Miari's Wake to the battlefield before recasting his commander, revealing the top 10 cards of his library. Phil puts Ral, Izzet Viceroy, Death Reap Ritual, and Kaya's Wrath into his hand and casts the Wrath, putting yet another counter on Firemine's Research. Liam draws and discards 3 cards to exile Nezahul until the end of turn. The board wipe then resolves, Phil gains 1 life, and Liam puts Prime Speaker Vannifar and Rattleclaw Mystic onto the battlefield with his Protean Hulk's ability. Not yet finished, Phil casts Ral, Izzet Viceroy, and uses +1 ability. He looks at the top 2 cards of his library and puts 1 into his hand, the other into his graveyard, and then plays Reliquary Tower. Phil then casts Tamio, Field Researcher, and uses her -2 ability to tap Liam's creatures down, preventing Vannifar from performing any shenanigans in Liam's next turn. Getting as much value as possible out of his Omniessence, Phil casts Death Reap Ritual, and finally passes the turn. Phil draws a card from his ritual, Nezahul is returned to play tapped, and Martin moves to his turn.
I cast Bane of Balaged, which Phil decides to counter with Counterflux. Liam draws from his Dinosaur, and I cast Planar Bridge, followed by Wayfarer's Bauble. I then end my turn.
Liam plays Stomping Ground, paying 2 life to have it enter untapped. Next he casts Kiora, Behemoth Beckoner, which Phil swiftly counters with Dorin's Veto. Liam draws from Nezahul, casts Rhythm of the Wild, and then casts Atali, Primal Storm. He gives the Dinosaur haste with his Rhythm of the Wild, and moves to combat, to which Phil responds by removing 2 counters from his enchantment to draw a card. Liam then attacks Phil with both of his Elder Dinosaurs, and Atali's trigger exiles the top card of everyone's library. He casts his own Wilderness Reclamation, Stephen's Selesnya Signet, and Phil's Spring, searching his library for an island and putting it into play tapped. Phil then takes lethal damage, knocking him out of the game, and Liam passes to Stephen, untapping all of his lands thanks to Wilderness Reclamation.
Stephen keeps the top card of his library where it is, draws it, and plays Exotic Orchard. He then casts Phyrexian Swarmlord and passes the turn.
Martin casts Soul Ring, and Liam draws a card. Martin then activates Planar Bridge, searching his library for Void Winnower and putting it into play. Liam sighs as he literally can't even, and Martin equips his Swiftfoot boots the even number hating Eldrazi. He then activates his mirror, having it become a copy of Void Winnower until the end of turn, and moves to combat. Liam takes 22 damage, lowering his life total to a dangerously low amount, and Martin ends his turn. Liam responds to this by flashing in his commander, having him enter with a +1/+1 counter thanks to his enchantment, and then moves to his turn.
Liam activates Vanafar's ability, sacrificing Rattleclaw Mystic to put Bounding Krasis into play, whose ability he uses to untap Vanafar. Sensing our impending doom, I respond to the Fishless's ability by exiling Vanafar with the brittle effigy that everyone had forgotten about, ruining Liam's plans for an easy victory. Liam then chooses to give Bounding Krasis haste with Rhythm of the Wilds and casts Zealous Conscripts, taking control of Phyrexian Swarmlord until the end of turn. He chooses for the conscripts to enter with a +1/+1 counter, given that they already have haste, and then casts Overwhelming Stampede, giving all of his creatures +7/+7. Moving to combat, Liam attacks me with the Swarmlord and Stephen with everything else. I take 11 infect damage and Stephen takes lethal combat damage, ending the game with Liam as the victor. Well, that's it for another game. We hope that you enjoyed it. Don't forget that you can support the channel in 3 easy ways: liking this video, subscribing, and leaving us a comment. I read every single one. Also, feel free to follow us on Twitter @4commander and check out our Patreon page, links are in the description. We'll see you next time.